Okay, I think we are good. Let me share the screen, of course. Okay.
All right.
Yep, we're ready to get started. Let me introduce everyone. All right, hello everyone. Today will be our day 4 of the Student Advisory Week. Right now, we have Dr. Brankovic here to talk about the nanosystem concentration. So everyone, let's get ready.
All right. Thank you, students, for invitation. Like every year, I'm just going to give you an idea what nano concentration in electrical engineering is and what we try to prepare you for through these specific topics. Basically, I'm in electrical engineering department full professor for the last 20 years. I worked at National Lab and I also worked in industrial research for 4 years. And my research is commonly described as materials related research, where I specifically look in certain type of the structures which have some scale and size dependence. And, we try to synthesize novel materials and devices. And for that purpose, I'm involved in this nano concentration teaching, the last course in the series. It's working. So to give you more specifics, what I do, I'm basically having a significant portion of my research in electrochemical and chemical thin film growth for applications such as, corrosion protection, magnetic thin films for industrial electromagnetic induction and nano thin film inductor devices, for catalysis application, and many others. Among these, generally students who work in my lab get a solid material science background and they learn a lot about electrodeposition and chemical deposition.
Excuse me 1 second. Hello, everyone. Is the audio working for you guys? Can you guys hear Dr. Brankovic? Sorry, I think guys on mine, the audio seems to be a little weak.
I think microphone is on the camera, right?
I'm not sure. I know it should work. I know that sorry. Just want to make sure this is you.
Yeah. And so another aspect of our research interest in my group is that we work on monolayer catalyst design, and monolayer meaning atomic monolayer, such as shown here and here. And this has different implications in a catalyst design for fuel cells, for isotope separation, for electrolysis, chlorine evolution reaction, and so on. And generally, again, we are only interested in the monolayer level catalysts, which means one atomic layer, which is again nanomaterial in essence. And a lot of students that work in this area are skilled both in thin film deposition and catalysis. We're also interested in designing sensors for magnetic field application, for ultrasound application, for chemical sensing, and they're also based on thin films or some nanostructures that you can see here, which have a high surface to volume ratio. In general, those are nano devices, like here, for example, where the device is only a order of a few tens of nanometers. And overall, convincing you that I'm, greatly positioned to tell you a lot of good things about nanotechnology and nanomaterials if you choose to focus on this concentration in electrical engineering. Now, I'm sure that these core courses, 513-19, 5320, 5321, which are required to have this nano concentration, could be taken also across the departments, which means mechanical, chemical, and other students can sign up for them. Now, the only problem is that this concentration is within the electrical engineering department but that does not stop any of the students from engineering to learn about these topics. Right? These are the required courses to have this concentration on your diploma, while these are the courses that you are free to take to make up the rest of the credits. Then there are other technical electives from this group, and obviously, you need to look, how many credit hours you need to have a, satisfy the electrical engineering curriculum. But in general, students to make up the rest of the credits for their curriculum, they can take any other engineering courses. That would be totally fine. Usually, some students like to learn typically more about antenna design while they have nanofabrication and nanomaterials concentration. Why? Because a lot of research in plasmonics and this area of the electromagnetic transduction is already nanoscience. Or, for example, some students that like to learn about energy conversion devices also like to learn about, magnetic thin films and stuff that, mentioned in this part of the coursework, and so on. In general, what we really try to prepare students is the fact that about 50% of you upon graduation will get some kind of a job in some kind of technology field that to some extent is directly connected to nanomaterials and nanotechnology, one way or another. You are not probably familiar at the moment how much nanotechnology and nanomaterials are involved in everyday life, but I can tell you for sure that if you just think a little bit and you see the coating of your windows, that's already nano thin film, right? Or microchip is already nano device, because transistors in this chip, which we have few billions of, are of order of few tens of nanometers. So some rude classification would be that, nano is all that is below 100 nanometers, which doesn't have to be. Nano means that, the scale and size starts to matter in performance, whether it's device or material. Material changes property, device performance maybe does not obey anymore classical physics. It has to be modeled from the quantum mechanical point of view, right? The biggest growing segment of the technology today is nanotechnology and pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceutical, obviously, you guys can anticipate, people like to live longer. All these viruses and disease scare off everybody. And so there's a lot of research going on in this area because it's very profitable. At the same time, a lot of dinosaur technology don't have any more space for improvement because they are pretty much perfected, like steel production, and other things. And so what is really left is the open space for nanotechnology, which is getting involved in everything. From daily life, I can tell you a lot of diagnostics in the biomedical area or drug delivery, pharmaceuticals, involve some kind of a nanomaterial-based approach, whether it's through the nanoparticles, whether the diagnostic is enhanced through some plasma resonance and so on, which are nanomaterials or nanoscale-based phenomena. Or if you think about, just simply, having more effective or more better lifetime of your batteries, that involves some kind of implementation of nanomaterials. Or when you think about, having a better catalyst for chemical production of different compounds, or energy conversion of hydrogen in fuel cells to electricity, those are catalyst all nanomaterials. So overall, this is the field where basically knowing a little bit more than a classical curriculum in electrical engineering, or for that reason in any of the engineering departments, just gives you a width and breadth to be able to look more interesting for future basically employers if you get the chance to get an interview. Why? Because, let's say if they're looking for somebody who is a classical electrical engineering student, they know, circuits, this, that, that's good. But then suddenly you pop some kind of a topic just about nanomaterials or some kind of fancy devices you heard about during these courses. And then the guy would be impressed because why? Because he doesn't expect this to hear from the regular EC graduate, or for that reason, any graduate. And so knowing more than a typical graduate is just advantage. Now, if you look the scales here, you can see that pretty much nano is in this bottom part where we're looking below 100 nanometers, and different phenomena and materials really are associated with it. Most of you have heard about carbon nanotubes, spiky balls, nanowires, these quantum corals, nanograin materials, biomolecules that they use as a scaffold for certain kind of device fabrication, all sorts of stuff. What I'm trying to tell you, there's a lot of work in molecular electronics, biodiversification, a lot of things are coming up, which really we cannot give you a clear idea yet, because what we really teach in this undergraduate coursework is something that is relevant, meaning, eventually you might get a job and have some association with the subject. There's a lot of upcoming things that even I cannot predict. Technology is advancing every year. So for that reason, who knows what will be a new discovery in few years from now, and whether, some kind of a drug will assume some kind of a nanoparticle that will have certain kind of advantage over the traditional, type of diagnostics or drug delivery. In the particular case, just to give you an idea that even classical technologies that you don't think about as nanotechnology, any MEMS is basically nanotechnology. Any, for example, in a biomedical sector, this, what you see is a basically size of it's a camera with all electronics, optics, and everything that is the size of maybe a mid-sized pill. And if you swallow this up, you can get your abdomen examined and intestines completely, instead of going to colonoscopy and other things. And the reason why this really works is that all things here are miniaturized to such a level, including a battery that powers this device, that actually all this information is wirelessly sent through your body to a signal accepting device, which is outside of your body, while you're basically sleeping and digesting this pill. Actually, you're not digesting it, goes through your system. But, just give you an idea, if you might end up in the doctor, unfortunately, for some problem, and he asks you, why don't you swallow this up and come and see me tomorrow? Just wear this, which is basically like a tape recorder or something that basically records all these pictures as this goes through your intestines. That's because nanotechnology allows this. Then you can see a lot of chip today, circuitry, it's all nano devices, because the basic essence of the chip, which is transistor, is the order of a few tens of nanometers, and the speed is directly related to the size, and the smaller size takes a higher clocking speed. Then magnetic recording, disk drives, those are already nano world for a long time. The magnetic bits are order of 10 nanometers, while the magnetic recording head is a true nano device, which we mentioned in our courses to give you an idea how this really looks like. Optical switches and many other things. I just cannot go into all this at the moment. If you look, for example, some advancement recently, people are using the viruses, for example, as a scaffold templates to produce certain kind of organized structures. Why? Because viruses are order of a few tens of nanometers. They're not truly living organisms, but they're not also dead organisms. But it turns out they're really nicely organized, which we can use for some kind of a manipulation of the material and organization at the nanoscale. Then if you look just the classical microchip cross section, you probably have seen those bottom lines, which is the back. And those are transistors with interconnects, which are only a few tens of nanometers. And then soldering bumps, and there's a lot of work in superfilling area where all this is possible due to some phenomena, which we also mentioned in our courses. Now, if you talk to somebody who's in optics, he will tell you that the band gap, which is basically the difference between valence energy of the valence electrons and conduction electrons in the semiconductor, is size dependent. And this is true because if you make a small nanoparticles with different sizes of the same material, you can see that the light that they emit after UV excitation has different colors, and different colors correspond to different energies because the band gap of these particles is size dependent. Now, keep in mind these are the same material, or probably cadmium selenide, but the particle size in each of these beakers is quite different. And you can see the reason why those size effects we try to introduce to you so you can appreciate more is that the surface contribution to the overall dimension of the object becomes significant, while the surface atoms are different than the bulk ones. And you can see this is already shown here that, you know, as you go smaller and smaller and smaller, the surface atom contribution to the overall number of atoms starts to increase. Why is that important? Because the nanomaterials have different melting temperature, for example, than the materials that are bulk. And when you go really small, suddenly the melting temperature decreases. Same thing with resistivity, which increases with the size. And many of these phenomena are exploited to create better sensors, or maybe to create structures that are conveniently employed for certain type of functionality. There are other tricks and interesting approaches to create nanomaterials which look like a bulk, but if you zoom down in, you know, you will see that they are very nanoporous. So we call this NPG nanoporous gold. You know, that could be a bulk material that you can hold in your hand, but when you look down in the very detail, you will see it consists of these very small, tiny ligaments, which are a few tens of nanometers. So this nanoporous gold is used for all sorts of different applications, and we generally produce this by DLI process, where, for example, we mix silver and gold or copper and gold. We selectively remove silver, and what is left is this nanoporous structure. And again, if I have to convince you why you should go to nano concentration program, is that, again, a lot of smart people before I even went into this arena of nanomaterials and nanotechnology have anticipated that this will be the key technology in the future. And this is true. You know, the country that has the highest developed nanotechnology will be the leader in the world. And I can tell you for sure right now, there's a serious competition with United States from the other countries that heavily invest in this area. This is a maybe older slide, but the investments and impact on the market, when you think about, is that this is all, by now, it's not 1 trillion, it's $10 trillion. Can you imagine, you know, this is more than American weapon industry, way more, right? And you can see that the numbers are quickly changing. Honestly, I have to update these slides, but this is the area where there's highest growth with pharmaceuticals and biomedical sector as well. Here, just to give you a progression, how national investment went from you know, few hundred millions to a few billions in just 10 years, and now are not few billions, now a few tens of billions, right, in next 10 years. And here are some examples where you already have nanomaterials. Now, you probably don't know about this, but you know, let me show you some examples of that. Like if you take, you know, super high-tech bike, which is super light, maybe 2 pounds, the whole bike. The reason why it's so light that the frame is made of carbon nanofibers, which are super strong, super tiny and light. Then, of course, you may play tennis, but you don't know that carbon fibers are making up both the strings and the frame. And you know, those are already existing technology. This costs a few $100. This costs a few $1,000. So it's not like you have to do research to get this done. It's already technology. And then, you know, some other stuff, you know, from helmets to, you know, other things. So for example, you've seen those, they sell this, especially they're popular among the men, those clothes which golfers use. I don't know if you've seen them, they're kind of pricey, like a couple $100. But those are specially integrated with nanomaterials. They're coated so they don't get wet at all. You can throw them in a pool of water, take them out, they're dry. They're super hydrophobic, that's what they call it. And same with the swimming shorts. You know, some expensive ones are super hydrophobic. They're always dry. I mean, you know, they're not good if you want to swim fast because they provide drag, because you know they don't wet the water. But you know, in terms of getting instantly dry as soon as you get out of the water, they're pretty good. I mean, your skin has to dry. Keep in mind, you are wet. Shorts is not, right? And so on. And there's a lot of many things, like if you think about energy harvesting from light, we're making very good absorbers by using nanotechnology, making this super efficient and catalysis. Here's an example of nanowire that can serve for just exploration of the future transistor concept and many other things. So with this, I can conclude only that if you're looking to hear something new, you should sign up for this concentration area, because you can hear new things, like, for example, about how we can grow nanowires, but not with the muscle, not how they do this in Intel, but how you can do this in a lab with a piece of graphene or graphite and some intelligent approach, and these are references that you can go and see, and so on. But that's pretty much where I would stop and say, if you really want to hear something different, come and sign up for the nano concentration area. That's pretty much it. All right.
Thank you for your time. Let me see. Does anyone in the chat have any questions? Anything they'd like to ask? Well, while we wait on them, so I saw that one of the courses that Nano students had the option of taking, or most ECE students. had the option
Remember,
of-
these are ECE slides because truly nothing stops you of taking these courses, even if you're not ECE student.
Right. Yeah.
The only difference is that when you take an ECE and you take all these required courses, then what you end up having a diploma which says, like, for example, whether you're electromagnetism concentration or nanotechnology, nanomaterial concentration, or what else, electronics or power electronics, this kind of stuff. But I'm generally advertising this as a good thing for every engineering student to know about, because remember, there's no division among the disciplines in nanotechnology. You need to know a little bit of chemistry, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. So it's really not departmental thing, although we have it in our department. Truly, it's across the engineering widely.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I was going to ask that. I saw one of the courses was this one called Introduction to Nanomaterials Research.
Yeah, that's the course which you can take, and then you really usually there's professors that do this kind of research, and you design a project with the professor, and you take some lab work in his lab, get some data, and eventually get creative with this. This is basically one-on-one interaction.
Okay, sounds like there's a good maybe a more emphasis on the research side of things within at least this concentration.
Yeah. Well, it's not only research. What we try to give you an idea is, like, there's no nano engineering department, right? But there's maybe not necessarily to have a nano engineering department. What is really good for students just to get informed, have a good feeling about what makes nanomaterial different than the bulk. And second, what a nano device generally means. Sometimes you can get nano device by using the bulk material, but just to cut, make some kind of a tiny dimensions, right? And device might perform differently because those dimensions suddenly become quantum mechanical world, right? Or you can make a device which may be even macroscopic, but the essential performance of the device is dependent on the nanomaterial that you use there, like this DLO structure, sensor, whatever, right? And so it's different things, right? And that's what you need to get aware of, right? And tomorrow, most likely, you end up having a job. At one point, you will have some kind of interaction with some company, somebody, some problem you need to solve, some product you need to acquire, some service that requires some kind of expertise in this, which is good because already you are having advantage over other guys who don't have a clue what you're talking. one.
Right.
All right.
I kind of have something a little maybe funny to say. So I don't know if you want to hear it, but I think was the lab for I think the introduction to nanomaterials class removed?
Actually, it wasn't removed truly. What has happened is that there was a very few interests, and that was usually associated like 1 credit hour extra to take the lab with the course, right?
Right.
But over the time, I personally didn't teach that part. This course I teach this year, but I didn't teach in the past, and so that part of the lab, I guess, interest dwindled a little bit. It could be still, you know, if let's say a student wants to sign up, right? You know, we could put it back, but it wasn't really much of an interest.
Right. Yeah. No, I mentioned this because I know a guy who was registered to take the nanomaterials class, but you know he's computer engineering, so because of the degree requirements, he has to, his ECE elective has to be 4 hours, so it didn't work out. But he was interested in it, so yeah, definitely.
All right. Okay. I got to run to. I have some meeting, but
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
all the best. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. All right, everyone. That was Dr. Brankovic. Does anyone have any questions I